I'm pretty much a hot mess right now. I just got out of a 2 stint in the ER weekend, so I know I look terrible. I do. But I feel way better than I did because I had a couple of temperatures on a couple of days that, like, I mean, I was hallucinating, not like out loud, but like I was having like the images and like it was cray cray, okay, like, and I still feel kind of I need to eat, like, I need to drink bacon grease. We'll get there, but I wanted to talk about this because I thought about it. If I titled the video right, then you'll notice that I didn't say all NF and idealist love fails. I said why it fails, and I said this because I wanted to make a statement as well that it doesn't always fail. Sometimes NF and idealizing and all of that, not even by NFs, just idealizing in romantic relationships, that doesn't always have to be a bad thing, you know? It can be a good thing too. And it can be good, a helpful thing in a relationship when you're dating someone awesome, you know, and it can help you not focus on the little things, because you shouldn't do that. You know, you should always be focusing on the positive in a relationship. You should always, you know, maybe noticing things that are negatives or whatever, but either accepting that, okay, these are two imperfect people, you're imperfect as well, and that's just the way that it goes, or even just trying to healthily figure out how to come to compromises about things. Hang on. What? No, not no, Jen. So if you're in love, you know, idealizing can definitely be a good thing. I mean, if you're dating someone that's super awesome and you've got like this idea, maybe you're not even idealizing them, you know, maybe they're just super awesome, and it's great to look at whoever it is that you love with gaga eyes forever. You know, my parents are definitely like this, okay, and which is part of why I'm making this video too, because I don't really know where I got my love idealism from. I don't know if it's because I was an INFP growing up, which is one of my theories, or if it's because I got it from my ENFJ mother, who then just handed it down to me. But I was long an idealist in love, you know, and if I ever would go to my mom with things, it would always be that, well, it should be like this, or it should be like that, it should, you know. And so then if it wasn't, then I would hear her voice in my head, and then I would end up agreeing with it. It would be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But why it fails when it does, and why it fails, I think is because it's selfish. NF and idealist love is completely selfish. And what I mean when I say this is that it only looks at things from the idealist, the person doing the idealizing's perspective. Then it only thinks about the person doing the idealizing's feelings and where they're at in the relationship as far as the growth and what stage they're at and what they need and all of that. So the idealizing, when it is going to fail or when it is unhealthy, it is because of the extremely selfish nature of it. Because the idealist, the person doing the idealizing, they might think of a plan in their head that they don't share, you know, and or they might think of they haven't seen somebody. Oh, maybe it's because that person's planning something for them, because the person doing the idealizing makes themselves the center of the other person's universe. They just automatically do it. This is what I used to do too. So I know what it's like, and I do feel like I could totally be like a hybrid INFP, ENTP, or I used to be an INFP, because I can do the fantasy when it comes to love, maybe not with everything, but when it comes to love, I can watch the firework go, you know what I mean? I can just watch that little tendril, and it keeps going and going, and, you know, where that can be damaging in a love relationship is because, you're thinking about yourself as the object of the other person's affection, and maybe you haven't seen them because they're doing something for you, or maybe the next time you see them they're going to be planning this or this or this or this. And the danger of that is that the farther it goes, the worse whatever it is that they actually do, maybe it's this, they're just going to show up, the worse that seems to you, you know. but they showed up. They want to see you. You know what I mean? But since you had already like made up all this like total fantasy, whatever, and let your imagination follow it, then that what actually happens in real life falls short. Whereas if you hadn't gotten caught up with that and they just showed up at your door on a Tuesday and they wanted to see you, then that's pretty cool. That's great. I mean, that's hard for a lot of people to do this day and age. Have you ever been to another country? Have you ever been to Italy? Have you ever been to like, you know, Mexico or South America? Okay, guys in our country are not forward. You know, they don't have balls, a lot of them. Sorry, but it's just true. I mean, some of them do, but, and some of their parents raised them in ways that taught them how to be forward. But I swear, for a lot of guys, just being able to show up is huge. You know what I mean? And probably the same goes for girls too. I don't know, but I feel like romantically, as a culture in America, we're severely challenged. But we still have the ideals, and we still see the movies, and we still have the love stories and the books and the, you know, so even though as a culture, if that's what you want to call it, we're severely challenged and probably set back in time a long ways, even from our own parents. We still have the ideals and the fantasies floating around us. So for those of us with vivid imaginations, that's a bad thing as far as remembering to check in with reality, and so that we can keep our eye on, okay, what's real and what we should realistically be expecting, and also be holding ourselves accountable for. What I'm trying to say is that the danger comes when you allow yourself to follow that little tendril of smoke, especially depending on what stage in the relationship you're at. Because if you're not even at a stage where you know exactly how the other person's feeling, or you know exactly where the two of you stand, or you know that person well enough to know if they might do something like you're imagining or not, then you might just end it if they don't do it. And I used to do things like that, you know? Not really. That sounds harsh and cold. I didn't really, but I would get upset, you know, especially like I've kind of like had a few experiences where people would kind of lead me on to think that, and then, but who knows, it could have all just been my own crazy mind, honestly, but it might not have been, and if it wasn't, then that's fucked up. But the other danger of it too is that usually even when you get to that little like halfway point of your tendril that you're following of all the things that could be happening, you know, it's kind of nuts and you know it, you know, like you're like, oh, they're just standing on top of a stadium shouting I love you. But then if it could keep going and going and going and going, it pretty soon it's on the blimp. You know, Jay-Z is in like Madison Square Garden, and it's like a dedication, you know, it's like written, like it's in smoke across the sky. They've carved out a part of the moon with your name, you know. And so the more you're like off like following these fantasies, the less crazy it becomes to you, at least the littlest parts of it. Even though when you started out you knew even the littlest parts of it were a little crazy, especially for maybe where you were or who the person is, and all of that. But the more you let yourself like buy into these and go off on these little things, instead of keeping yourself at least 1 foot checked into reality, so you could still go off and have these things, but like let's check back in and make sure progress in the real world is going along fine too. The longer you stay in fantasy land, the more real all that seems to like be like pretty plausible. Like, why couldn't my name be carved on the moon? You know? And so then reality severely let you down. And the way I'm going to, here's my way that I'm going to show you how I know, and how I think that you probably can't disagree with me. Any idealists that have done this, even any personality type that has done this, that is idealized in this way, you know, idealized another person, idealized your relationship, idealized what you think you should mean to them. Oh, before I say this, I wanted to say one more thing. As far as the actual idealists go, like the ENFPs and the INFPs, they have the FI, and then the ENFJs and the INFJs, they have the FE going into this, but they're both idealists when it comes to love. And I think, at least from looking at my mother, I think that ENFJs, the FE idealists with love, it's more of an outside looking in. They want the relationship from the outside looking in to be the ideal. And then the INFPs and the ENFPs, I think they want it more from the inside, being something that just to them would be the ideal, you know. So for the INFJ and the ENFJ, I would think for them, they would want like somebody else looking at them as like, aren't they the most perfect couple ever? And then the INFP and the ENFP would want themselves to think like, we're the most perfect couple ever because of all these things. Does that make any sense? But they're both idealizing either way, and they both can be fine as long as the person knows that, what the reality is, and maybe could use their idealism in a good way to see those good qualities in the other person, and not like turn their idealism negative and only see the bad all of a sudden, like forget about all the good and like crazily focus on the bad, you know. And not wanting anybody to overlook bad, especially really bad. But like I said, I think that idealism can be very helpful and healthy when you can use it to magnify the great qualities, and not look so harshly on the negatives if they're not that negative. You know, if they're just human beings, BEAN beings. We're all human beings here. So here's my way that I think that I can get you to understand and possibly even agree with me that it's selfish and it's not fair to the other person. How many of your fantasies that you've had where you've followed yourself on this little tendril, has it been a fantasy about you declaring your love for them on top of the stadium? How often have you been the one carving their name into the moon without them doing anything first to merit it? You know, just because you love that. How often have you fantasized about that? You know?